Well, this is the reason why we can't have nice things.
What?
And why women should not be allowed to speak football.
It's true.
Example A, ESPN's Monica McNutt.
Who?
Yeah, she needs to be fired.
You sure about that? Yeah!
I'm Jazz Borganzo on this. When you, as someone who supposedly knows about sports, can't tell the difference between Barry Sanders and Colonel Sanders.
What the fuck?
Are you retarded?
Yeah, that's a problem. But it's what's next. What's up, everyone? Jazz Borganzo, what's next? Your daily dose. Hope you guys are feeling good today on this Tuesday. Well, let's just jump right into it. We as men are simple creatures. We like our creature comforts. You know, we are decisive. You know, hey, I'm going to the store. I need to get XYZ. I come out with XYZ. Women, say, hey, you know what? I go into a store, I get XYZ, and I get A, B, C, D all the way to XYZ. Why am I saying that? Well, because there are just certain things that we like, as men. We like our work, we like our home life, we tend to our family, and we like our sports. Clean cut, we like our sports. No filler, no nonsense, straight, no chaser, But sadly, of course, we live in the age of political garbage, which means it's infiltrated and inflicted or infected every nook and cranny that is sports. Example A, we go to ESPN. This is the reason why we can't have nice things. Just talk about sports. That's all I want to know. And make sure you're knowledgeable of said sport. If you're going to talk about basketball, make sure you know the game. If you talk about football, you know the game, soccer, baseball, hockey, and so forth and so on. Well, ESPN continues to miss the memo when they have someone like Monica McNutt at the helm. When you, as somebody who supposedly knows about sports, can't tell the difference between a Barry Sanders and Colonel Sanders, yeah, that's a problem. And here we go. This comes out of Outkick. ESPN will lose its locker room if it allows Monica McNutt to talk football again. Since Saturday, Outkick has learned from her from countless ESPN staffers about the segment, and we'll watch that just in a bit. For a certain corner of sports media, there are no consequences for their actions. At ESPN, it's proven you can get away with just about anything if you have the right skin color and political opinions, such as race-shaming people for marrying white women, making dick jokes on television, and comparing genocide to China to asking voter ID in America. Yes, we're still talking about a sports network. Monica McNutt fits neatly into that category. Case in point, ESPN renewed her contract last October despite her racially charged campaign against Caitlin Clark last year. That said, we think there could be consequences for her latest headline. On Friday, McNutt hosted the First Take with Stephen A. Comedian Drewski joined the set wearing a Barry Sanders iconic Detroit blue 20 jersey. McNutt, who apparently isn't unaware who Sanders is, assumed it was Shedeur Sanders, of course that's Deion's son, who plays for the Cleveland Browns and not the Lions. Again, for context, Shedeur Sanders plays for the Cleveland Browns and not for the Detroit Lions.
Good morning. Good morning.
How you doing? Feeling good, man. Excited. Still here for this. I'm up.
Barely.
I'm up, though. Jeez.
Well, it's a blast for us to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so the jersey. Let's get it.
The jersey. Okay, simple enough. It's blue. It's 20. How hard?
Into it because obviously this ties to one Shedeur Sanders who balled out in his first.
No.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Barry Sanders.
Of course, what you don't see is they pan away to Stephen A. and Stephen A. biting his tongue severely, almost cuts it off because, of course, he's just got to roll with the segment. While ESPN had previously used McNutt as a basketball analyst, well, then again, that worked out wonderfully. The network has tried to expand her role as late. Really? In fact, talent agents say they suspect ESPN will consider a candidate for a 2 p.m. time slot where it plans to eventually introduce a new personality-driven show. Yeah, that'll be canceled. But truthfully, we don't think ESPN can put McNutt on television anymore to talk about football after what happened Friday. Seriously. Now, maybe ESPN will read this article and put her on an NFL segment tomorrow just to spite us, but we won't recommend that. Put it bluntly, ESPN would lose its locker room if it did. Since Saturday, Outkick has heard from countless ESPN staffers about this segment. Many prefaced their reactions with, I like Monica still, but they were embarrassed for her, for the producers, for the management, and ESPN brand. Barry Sanders is one of the greatest players in NFL history, considered the greatest running back in history. McNutt didn't know who he was. This is not a blunder. This is a lack of knowledge, history, preparation. It's inexcusable. Plenty of ESPN hosts would jump at the chance to sit alongside Stephen A. and others, maybe David Dennis Jr., but they would all know who Barry Sanders is. So to see to have their position and not them is infuriating, and to her colleagues. ESPN has already suggested that it doesn't value experience or credibility by elevating McNutt this far. Continuing to elevate her will only confirm that. Put simply, ESPN should start rewarding talent based on merit again. McNutt hosting a general sports show like First Take is an insult to every sports fan who helps make the show the cash cow that it is. Here's an idea. Make an employee pass the Sanders sports history quiz before going on air. Tony Bruno said on ESPN once, quizzed him by making him identify the third line of the Canucks. Apparently, Bruno passed. Of course, before getting hired to help launch ESPN Radio 92, I was asked to identify the third line of the Canucks. 23 years later, ESPN employs Malcolm McNutt, who had no idea who Barry Sanders was. Nice. And of course, he prefaced that with DEI dunce. This is a bit much. However, holding a photo up Barry Sanders as asking who's this would suffice. It would certainly weed out people like McNutt. The fact of the matter is that ESPN, who is gobbling up networks, see NFL Network. And when you are hiring people, the hell with experience, the hell with credibility, the hell with all that, one, are you black? Are you a woman? And do you have a vagina? Well, if you checked off 2 of the 3, you still probably will get hired at ESPN. But this is inexcusable. If you bring her on to not have the intelligence enough to be, to come off sounding so uneducated, so ill-prepared, especially when it comes to Stephen A., who knows these players and these jerseys like the back of his hand, yeah, I'm kind of surprised Stephen A. didn't just jump in and said, Monica, I'll handle it from here. Why? Because I know shit and you don't. But then again, I don't handle the DEI process over at ESPN. Now do I? And with that being said, I'm Jazz Berganzo. This is What's Next. Want to see more like this? Please leave a comment below. Like it, share it, subscribe to it. Hit that notification bell so you guys never miss a thing. Continue spreading the word about the show. Appreciate you guys watching as always. And we'll see you next time. Peace.